Spoilers for the game Mouthwashing. You probably thought that I was finished with all the mouthwashing videos. I analysed every character in the story. What else could there be to do? Well, it occurred to me that there was in fact one more character to analyse in the game, one whose face we never truly see, only hiding themselves behind a mascot and fax machine messages. I'm of course referring to the Pony Express. Before I get into the analysis, I just want to thank each and every one of you for watching my videos, in particular my mouthwashing videos. The Jimmy video is my most popular at the moment, and the Curly video has almost reached 1,000 views. Again, I thank all of you for taking the time to watch my videos and really hope many of you will subscribe and stick around for more. Back to the video. Pony Express is the company that the characters work for in Mouthwashing. They are a space freighter company that employs people for long distance jobs. During the events of the game, the crew are on the Tolpa, the last manned ship before the disaster starts. For those who don't know, the Pony Express in Mouthwashing was based on a real life American mail service that only lasted 18 months between 1860 and 1861. Unfortunately, the company went under as the horseback mail system quickly became obsolete. The crew themselves consist of employees of different ranks and time employed under the Pony Express. The longest is the mechanic Swansea, as he states himself in the game that working for the company had made him miserable. The next is the Captain Curly, who climbed his way through the ranks and made a reputation for himself as a good captain. The next is likely to be the co-pilot Jimmy, who is encouraged to join by his longtime friend Curly as he was struggling back on Earth. The next is also likely to be the nurse Anya, who is using the money to try and get into medical school. And the last is the intern Daisuke, whose first time on the job takes place during the events of the game. The ship itself is barely functioning at the start of the game. The company left a broken vent in utility, or at least not properly fixed, as when Daisuke went to fix it, he accidentally triggered the emergency foam and got stuck. This means the vent wasn't in a stable state before the crew was sent off, but despite this, the toll pass still passed inspection. When Daisuke accidentally triggers the emergency foam, Curly tells Swansea that it could have broken one of the cryopods that are supposed to freeze them for 20 years in case of an emergency. If this is the case, maybe the pods should be somewhere where they won't be at risk of being damaged. Speaking of the cryopods, Daisuke is a last minute addition to the crew, but the company knew the ship only had 4 cryopods, so if anything did happen purely by accident, then somebody would always have to be left behind. Curly said himself that he wished he pressured the company about this. The crew get their pay docked if they don't follow protocol exactly. Examples being, they are only allowed 5 hours of sleep a day, they get penalised for their break, even after the crash. If anyone other than the captain opens the cargo hold, they get penalised. When Jimmy ignores instructions when crashing the ship, they don't send help as he's purposefully driving directly into an asteroid, they only dock their pay. The company apparently need 5 people hauling mouthwash for an entire year. And speaking of the product, the mouthwash itself has a huge disclaimer at the end of its commercial of the risks in consuming the product. It says, consult with your local dental hygiene specialist before, during, and after the use of Dragon Breath X mouthwash. Dragon Breath will not take responsibility for any harm caused by the use of this product. The crew are only allowed one communal birthday a year, so each member takes turns per trip celebrating their birthday. Only the captain has clearance to make the cake. Even on his own birthday, he can't give clearance to someone else temporarily for him. Hurley gets a notice that everyone is being laid off and was instructed to tell the crew near the end of the job that the company still sent them to do the job, knowing they would lay them off. The crew do still get paid, but they don't have enough time to prepare themselves at home once they become unemployed. The only locks on the ship are in the cockpit and the medical room, for obvious reasons, so no one takes over the ship or steals any medication. But they don't have any in the dorm rooms, yet they put only one woman on a ship the entire year with all men. As we say today, it's not all men, and it's not. but you never know which man it could be. And in this case, two men were oblivious of the situation, and the man in charge chose his friend over the victim by not acting fast enough. The only two locks in the ship end up being used in the story. First by Jimmy in the cockpit when he crashes the ship to avoid responsibility, and second by Anya in the medical room when she couldn't take the situation anymore and didn't want anyone to stop her from what she wanted to do. The captain should be able to override all locks that doesn't invade the crewmate's personal space. Unfortunately, a real life example of this was a pilot with mental illness who locked himself in the cockpit when his co pilot was out. The lock was on the cockpit because of what happened during 9/11, and the pilot crashed the ship and killed everyone. Only the captain should know where the weapons are kept, such as the gun or the axe. The captain is the only one with access, but when the ship crashes in the game, the other characters are able to get hold of it. With the gun case, it gets moved around the whole game by Anya, who is trying to avoid Jimmy getting his hands on it. Unfortunately, he does, and he uses it to kill Swansea and then himself at the end. If you want to know more about the gun, I recommend watching either my Jimmy or Curly analysis video that goes into more detail. Even though Swansea has the axe after Curly let him keep it, he only used it aggressively once, and that was against Jimmy. Jimmy had got Anya killed, Daisuke killed, and put Curly in a critical condition. So with everything he had done, Swansea finally turned on him. Otherwise, the only time the axe is used during the game when Jimmy gets extra medication, and unfortunately, when Swansea puts Daisuke out of his misery after he climbed into the damaged vent. As we find out by the end of the game, Jimmy is extremely mentally disturbed, and Anya was the first person to show concern for his behaviour. You think Pony Express would provide psych evaluations before the trip to make sure that the crew are all stable enough to be in a confined space for a whole year, but they still let Jimmy board with the rest of the crew and put him working closely with his friend, who's also the captain, who could favour him over the others. Curly has to fill out the performance report on the crew. He says he won't mention that Anya hid the gun on the report. Doesn't think to add Jimmy's comment about the cartoon horses, especially as he was told that a member of his crew showed discomfort. Curly has a clear bias for Jimmy when we play as him for the crash. It was part of the reason that Jimmy was able to crash the ship. Of course, it was Jimmy's fault that led up to this moment. Curly put his friend before the rest of the crew and faced the consequences for it. My biggest question overall is why are the crew flying in space for a year just to ship mouthwash? Where exactly are they shipping it to? As far as we're aware, there are no aliens in this universe, and even if they did, I doubt they'd need mouthwash. The fact that at the end of the story, Curly's fate is unknown looks awful for the Pony Express. They should have had a way to track the ship and be able to know about the crash when it happened, so they could send someone out as soon as possible, or at least a way for any of the crew to get in contact with the company that they've had an accident. If it was implemented, the events of the game might not have happened, even though the crew still would have been laid off. Knowing that they were technically being watched, Jimmy would be less likely to escape responsibility. Knowing that someone would come and check out the situation if something happened would make him less likely for him to assault Anya, knowing that he wouldn't have got away with it as easily. To conclude, Pony Express is an absolutely awful company to work for, but sometimes it doesn't feel that much different from companies today. They've shown a lack of care for their employees' well-being, safety, mental and physical health, and they use their wages as leverage to make sure they're doing their job properly. Anyway, thank you so much for watching my video on the evil company that started everything in mouthwashing. If I missed anything they did to the crew, please let me know in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe for more, and I will see you in the near but probably far future.